This is Capitalize Your Finances, the show representing you, a select group of excited, ready, and fired up listeners seeking to potentially maximize your money moves and get after it. We don't settle for generic advice of always and nevers. Our currency is our intellect, and we constantly seek the logical way of likely creating advantages to potentially maximize wealth for our personal and unique situations. The show brings you this step-by-step framework to capitalize your finances in the aspects of your financial situation, and we strive to explore strategies and ideas to potentially help you capitalize on your financial decisions. We are capitalizers, and this is our show.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Paniotti, the Cap in Capitalize. And today's special guest is the director of Oklahoma State University, Peter Margaritis. He's a CPA, he's an author, he's a national speaker and fellow podcaster. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chris. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, and we've been looking forward to this for a while now. And before we dive into what you've got cooking at OSU, which is not Oregon State, it's Oklahoma State. Okay.
It's not Ohio State.
And it's not Ohio State.
Right.
So give us a brief background into who you are personally.
Wow. Brief. All right. So, Chris, I'm Greek American. I grew up in a Greek household. I grew up in the restaurant business. I grew up in a very gregarious environment. And I started in the restaurant business at 12 years old and went all the way through college and even after college. And I was managing a restaurant at one time. And I decided that I wanted to get into the business world. And I transitioned from that into banking. I won't go into all the nitty gritty. I'm sure we'll talk about some of it here. But what makes me tick is that even though I am a CPA and I maintain my license, I'm not a very good one. As you can see above my head, there's a sign that says the accidental accountant. Uh-huh. That's me. But that's okay. But I've been able to forge my way into stay in this profession and provide continuing education programming, primarily in the leadership development area. But the other thing that really separates me from a lot of other people in my industry is that many years ago, I started doing stand-up comedy. And Chris, to tell you the truth, I wasn't that good, because if I was really good, I'd be charging you for this. Okay?
Absolutely.
So, but from that, I learned a lot about stage presence and stuff. And then I found my true love, improv. And I found out that improv is not about making people laugh. I mean, if you're a good improviser, you can make people laugh. But there's leadership skills wrapped all around the world of improv. And prior to us starting, I've been working on a presentation I'm delivering next week to the Massachusetts Society of CPAs on this exact same topic of business improv. My third book, Off Script, Mastering the Art of Business Improv. So that's, and I've made it a lifestyle. And that's what drives me. And two words drive me as well, as we were talking beforehand. It's the word yes and the other word of and.
Yes.
I don't like no and I don't like but. There are times that we need to use them. There's a times we need to use no, and that's when somebody's pushing us across our ethical boundaries. But there are many ways to say a no by saying yes, and just the word yes and you do it in a way that when you say the word no, people get defensive, or but. People get very defensive. And then barriers come up and emotions are evoked. But yes is inviting, and when we follow it with and move it forward, it's amazing what we can solve if we put our ego aside, put our agendas aside, and actually listen to the other person. So that's kind of a brief overview of who I am, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and that actually spurred a number of questions. So getting into the restaurant business, and then you transitioned into banking, and then you found your love of improv. So out of those three that you listed, what would you say has provided you the most success in the professional world of CPA, as far as taking the skills from that specific set and transitioning it into what you're doing today?
Oh, improv, by far.
By far.
Improv is a communication tool. And we, as CPAs, are not known to be the best communicators.
Yes.
And I think your audience would have believed would vouch that. And the ability, I may not be great technically, but I was working at this one firm, smaller firm, after I got out of public accounting and went back in. I wasn't technically sound. I was technically inept. However, they would take me out to visit with the clients because I could talk to the clients. I knew enough to be dangerous. I should have been a salesperson for them. I knew enough to be dangerous, but getting into the nitty gritty, that wasn't me. And the ability to have those communication skills with the clients, with even staff inside. At that point, and that was back in the early 2000s, it still wasn't recognized that communication skills, those power skills, or we call them soft skills or interpersonal skills, are harder to learn and harder to master than the world of accounting or CPAs or anything that has to do with finance, the technical side. We can all learn that stuff if we want to, but dealing with people, communication, how I was trained was through the world of improv.
Well, and I can tell you from working with a number of CPAs, phenomenal CPAs, they are some of, if not the most technically sound people I know. And not all of them, but the majority of them are very introverted. And I've always thought to myself, there are these people that have the opportunity to take the world by storm. But when it comes to what you just said, whether it's the salesmanship or the lack of being able to pivot in a conversation, do you think that just kind of comes with the territory of being in the world of being a CPA, or do you think that's kind of an excuse?
Well, CPAs, most CPAs, not all, but most CPAs are introverted. They're risk adverse. That's just kind of the makeup. They're highly technical. They're left-brained. They don't like to take risks. They like linear lines. However, we have to take risks,
right?
And the ability to accept the fact that taking a risk, it's either going to win or lose. But if it fails, that's first attempt in learning. So how can I do it again? And how can I figure out what went wrong to make it right? It's that process of, okay, we think we got it. Coca-Cola, when they came out with new Coke, they invested millions and millions of dollars into that. And they actually, I think after 3 days, they actually did bag it because they realized they were so far off the mark. But nobody lost their job from what I understood. It was a learning experience. And CPAs need to be better communicators. They need to connect with their clients better. They need to realize that they speak a foreign language, and that foreign language is accounting.
Yeah, well, and that's what everyone says is accounting is the language of business, which I agree with, but I also don't, just because depending on how that can come off, like, yes, it's very technical, but some people that have said that it can also come off as pretentious. Like some of the best business people I know, they don't have a clue how to read a balance sheet or an income statement or a cash flow statement, but they get it. And that's just kind of an unwritten thing. You mentioned the kind of diving into the sales aspect of it. You see a lot of these CPAs, they graduate from college and they go work for one of the, I think it's Big Four now, or another big company equivalent, and you work your way up from, basically a, whatever it is, senior accountant, and then you become a manager, and then, you kind of climb the ranks. And then it's not until you become a senior manager or a partner that they suddenly throw you in to this world of, okay, now you've got to go sell. Well, they never had that. And they never had to have that. So do you think there's an issue with the infrastructure of that industry? Because the opportunities, in my eyes, for these younger CPAs to go and learn how to grow and sell themselves, it can be very lacking.
It is an infrastructure thing. And I've always said, so when somebody graduates from college and gets accepted into any firm, especially a large, medium-sized regional firm, your first 5 years of existence is technical knowledge driven right down your throat with zero in anything other than technical, the non-technical stuff. And during that 5-year period, you may move from staff accountant to a senior, and then into a manager role. And in that manager role, you've got to deal now with people, but you haven't had the skill set of how to deal with people. You're more technically sound. And there was an article in Harvard Business Review a while back said the smartest people in the room don't always make the best managers because they're so technically sound. And there's some people you don't ever want to put in front of a client, but you want them on your team because they provide that expertise research, that research that they do. So I've always said that, well, why can't we give them 90% technical in the first 5 years and then dribble in 10% over that period of time? So when they become a manager, they know how to network. They know how maybe to start to build a book of business. They can communicate better with their clients. They can do all these things, help even with negotiation, help. They've got somewhat of that foundation so they can propel up to exactly what you said. And I ask CPAs, do you like sales? And they go, no. And I go, well, you're in it. You're in sales.
Right.
You're selling yourself every day. And if you want to be in a firm and you want to be partner, and all you guys want to be partners, then you better learn how to sell. And look at selling as not, oh my God, I hate that. I can't do that. As no, I better learn it. I better become better at it because that's what's going to make my career excel. Not the spreadsheet, but excel further.
Right. So if you were starting a CPA firm today, or if you already had a successful CPA firm, would you have let's say a 5-year track of, hey, someone comes in, I will teach you the technical skills, but 10% of this time, and then increasing over time? Because let's face it, once you kind of know the tax code, yeah, there are things that change, but it doesn't waver a whole heck of a lot. It's just maneuvering of numbers. Would you basically rev up the sales engine in coaching of these freshly graduated CPAs?
Well, let me make this perfectly clear. I'm not delivering the technical information.
Yes. Nope. I get it. I totally get it.
Even I mean, the complex technical information, because that's out of my expertise. Right. However, I would hire in that talent to do that, those experts, those thought leaders. But I would spend that time. Yes, I would add 10% on each year. Yeah. And do it differently. So when they hit the ground, even before they hit the ground, they're already doing it. Right. Yeah, that's. And and the other thing I would do is from day one, I would take, if you were my client and I had a staff member working on the account and say, I got to go to Chris's office today. You're coming with me. I'd bring them and let them have the car conversation too. Have the car conversation coming back. Now, the old school thought process, well, I can't bill anybody for that time. Who cares? That's like a long-term investment into the firm's future, because those car conversations and seeing that interaction that's happening with the client is far more valuable than how am I going to bill them $200 for the hour? Right. That is a short-sighted analogy when we should be thinking long-term. And how do I invest into my people with those skills necessary and break the old school model?
Well, and that gets back to the very, very technical side, because if you get locked into the numbers too hard, then you're not going to be able to see past that. Well, it's a bad investment in the short run, which I totally get that. Now, let's go back to talking about you, because I know we went on a little tangent there. So take us back to when it started. I know you said that you were in the restaurant industry at 12, then you transitioned to banking. So when was it along your path that you were inspired to become a CPA and eventually even teach at OSU?
My father, always thought I would be a CPA, and he always kind of said that to me. I think you'd be a good CPA. And I went, okay. I took a class at the University of Kentucky. I got to intermediate accounting, and my professor, I couldn't really quite understand him. But the only thing I learned from that class is there's no such thing as a free lunch, and I got a D. So I went, okay, I've got to find my way another way. But long story short, when I was in the banking industry, our bank was bought by another bank out of Virginia, think it was Sovereign Bank. And the VP of commercial lending, when they were merging the bank, he was losing his job. And he came up to me and said, you know what, you've got this weird knack. You have an understanding of numbers and you have ability to communicate. Maybe you should build a safety net and go back to school like your father wanted you to and become a CPA. Well, I kind of took him up on that and ended up at being accepted at Case Western Reserve University's Masters of Accountancy program and ended up third in my class when I graduated. And then I got a lot of nice offers, but I settled with Price Waterhouse. And that dates me because this is prior to the Cooper's merger. And that's how I got into the accounting profession. Now, when I got there, my first thought was, why isn't anybody communicating with anybody in this office? We were stuck in our seats, we were stuck in our cubicles, we were stuck in our pods, and we would not really communicate at all. And I just never really understood that. But what took me out of public accounting is I was in the Cincinnati office of Price Waterhouse, and I was up for my third raise and promotion. Now, I said I'm an accidental accountant. On the technical side, I work hard, and that makes up for a lot. But I knew I wasn't a 5 out of 5, but I'm not a 4 out of 5. I'm somewhere in between. But my raise was not equitable to others who were moving in that same direction. Mine was a lot less. So I didn't get into the profession until I was 30 years old. Mm-hmm. So I had a little bit of gumption about myself. And I walked in the tax partner's office and asked him why. And this is almost an exact quote. He said, Pete, when we hired you out of Case Western Reserve, we hired you at a premium. Now we're going to take that premium and amortize it over the next 3 years to get you in line with everybody else. Now, from an accounting perspective, in my accounting humor, I'm being amortized, but not depreciated, because I'm not a tangible object in the world of accounting is depreciated. An intangible object is amortized. So he just saw me as a cloud, just kind of nothing that was there, but we're going to amortize him. And two, he saw this look on my face and he said, well, if you didn't find a job that pays you more, go ahead. Don't challenge me, please. I love when people challenge because I want to prove them wrong. So 3 months later, I came back and I threw a Victoria's Secret catalog on his desk. And he goes, what's this? My 2 weeks resignation notice. He got pissed. I said, don't you remember what you said to me? He said, yeah, but I didn't think you'd take me up on it. I said, sir, with all due respect, there's more of me out into your office than you realize. You might want to look at them a little bit closer. Sure. And take a listen to them, what they're doing. Sure. And that's how I transitioned out of public into industry, worked for Victoria's Secret for about 5 years.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayotu, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Yeah, and when you transitioned into not only Victoria's Secret, but just really just like the finance side of a massive company, what would you say was some of the biggest differences that you noticed versus actually working in a big CPA firm?
Because I would say I was in accounting and finance, okay. And quite honestly, they don't realize that they carry a stereotype when they leave that office into another person's office. And typically when an accountant walks into sales, customer service, whatever, the person on the other side thinks, oh God, here they come again. They're going to come and tell me no. And they refer to the head of the accounting and finance function as the CF no.
Got it.
So there's a stereotype. So what I realized is I need to break that stereotype. And this is how I got the accidental accountant piece. Because I realized I want them to see me as not the guy from finance. I want them to see me as Pete. I know Pete. I've had lunch with Pete. I've had a couple of drinks with Pete. I know he's a good guy. We talk. He's a sports guy. Okay. I want them to see me like that. And the only way for me to do that was to get out from behind my desk and work my way through the different divisions, the different departments, get to know people. So when it came time for me to go ask them for information, because I'm in the information gathering business, they're more inclined to do it. That was the biggest thing. But nobody else in that division, that department, saw that stereotype or accepted that stereotype, or felt like I should always be at my desk and as I say, my cheeks in the seat, versus out internally networking through the organization. They never saw the value of that.
Well, in one thing that just popped into my mind, because I have a number of friends that work at whether it's the big firms or Moss or whatever the case is. And you already spoke about it a little bit after, 3 years at PW, you decided to transition out. And that's something that a lot of my buddies have asked me on, okay, when would be the time to jump? Because there does come a point where if you're, I'm not saying there's a point of no return, but let's face it, if you become a partner at one of these firms, you can do really well, like really well.
Yep.
And I have always heard, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong here, that if you transition from a big CPA firm to maybe like a privately owned CPA firm, you have just as much opportunity plus flexibility plus family feel, etc. But if you transition into like the corporate world, like you did from the accounting side, you can almost get pigeonholed. Would you agree with that or disagree with that, and why?
Well, there's got to be some statistics on it. Here's what I do know. Those who leave public accounting and go into industry, rarely, a very small percentage will ever leave industry and go back into public accounting because of the work-life imbalance, because of the stress. But others stay in public accounting because they love the flexibility of different clients. I get to work on different things. Yeah. Yes, you can get to some degree pigeonholed when you go into a corporate environment, but you can, if you're coming in as an accountant, you're more than likely going to stay in that accounting phase to maybe aspire to controller or to CFO and take on greater responsibility. And it has a better work-life balance than public. Public has and it still has this persona of we're going to just grind them out, use them up, spit them out, bring in another one. And those who can survive, they will survive. That mentality is starting to change a little bit, but it's still, in some firms, it's still really there.
And do you think that change is for the better or worse, or a little bit of both?
I think it's for the better.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, Chris, you can't work 12, 14 hours a day. And actually, at the time, I think back in the day, we were doing maybe during busy season, which is a bad. It should be opportunity season or cash flow season. That's where we make our money. We make it sound bad. I've always been against that. You make mistakes. They're 10, 12 hours. Okay, that's still a lot.
Yeah.
But in a short period of time, that's manageable. However, some firms actually have put in relaxation rooms where you can go in and take an afternoon nap, not a sleep, but an afternoon, and just kind of get away from it to refresh yourself. But a lot of times we don't have the opportunity to refresh ourselves.
Sure.
So I think we have to think how the human mind works, how the brain works, and realize that everybody has this. When's the best time for you to do your work? For me, I'm an early morning guy. And around noon, doing other stuff or answering emails or stuff and then picking it up about 2 hours later. I think we need to look at the person, not at the process. And then look at the person, then build the process. But we've built a process within organizations that have been there for many years.
Yeah. Well,
there's got to be time for change.
And you think of the big firms, and again, I'm not knocking the big firms here. I want to be crystal clear. And the big firms have much more of that infrastructure. I can tell you from talking to a lot of our CPA clients that are, the smaller privately owned, their biggest issue is staff. They can't find anyone. But a lot of these big firms, they have that. And so you would think they'd be able to pivot into that pretty quickly. But I do get it's a fine line between, grinding people to absolute death versus you really do push through. And there is there is something to be said about, hey, the strongest will survive. And it's tough. Now, even though you left the corporate CPA world, you can never take the CPA out. And you fast forward many years, in today, you're teaching those at OSU about the CPA route. So what would you say is the best advice for those that are wanting to become CPAs or are already pursuing the profession?
Well, let me tell you how I got to Oklahoma State University. Yeah. I used to be in higher education years ago. I was at Franklin University, and then I was at the Ohio Dominican University. That's a big joke in Columbus, man. People just really laugh when I throw that one out at them. And OSU Oklahoma State was a client of mine, and they wanted to start this School of Accounting Communication Center, and they were looking for a director. And I had written 3 books. They were a client of mine. I'd interacted with them, and they pitched me the idea back in February of, would you be interested? Because I made a comment at a happy hour about I might want to get back into higher education at some point in time. And I get a contact from the department head about, were you serious about that? This is what I said. I said, if you were the Ohio State University, if you were my alma mater, Case Western, or University of Kentucky, I'd say no. Because I'm not hearing the words that are coming out of those institutions that I'm hearing coming out of your institution, where you guys believe in power skills and you believe that we need to become better communicators. And really, Chris, at the crux of it, we need to start at the university level. Because once you get out into industry, you can develop some bad habits, and you can put in situations, and a lot of times it's hard to change. So let's start early. Long story short, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. My role as the director of the School of Accounting and Communication Center, which we're building right now, as well as instructor of professional practice, and I teach 2 sections of survey of accounting. It's technical enough for me. I can get through it. I can have some fun with them. I can inspire them. I can find some business majors and turn them into accounting majors. But the real hook there was, I get to build this communication piece, and we're going to add these communication skills. The university provides a foundation. They get credit hours for business comm and all that other. But they don't go any further than that. However, the employers are going, we need people who can better communicate when they get out of college. They've been asking this for years. So the foresight of, I have to give credit here to Dr. Audrey Gramling, who was the head of the county department, and Dr. Ken Eastman, who's the dean of the School of Business there at Oklahoma State. They had this vision that let's find a way to do that, and supported this program, hired me. And the goal here is that to take the foundation that's already, but we're collaborating. We're not duplicating, and now start putting some more walls onto it. We've got business communication, okay, but they don't know how to write. They're not great business writers. So how do we get them from academic writing to business writing? We need to teach them how to write a memo today in class versus when they get out there. We need to provide them with some feedback on their presentation skills. We need to provide them some opportunities to learn how to network and become better networkers, because that's critical. All these critical pieces. And I'm taking a lot of my programming I've done over the last 20 plus years, and we're recreating it in different ways. And the way that we want to differentiate it is we want to be able to give some type of digital badge or some type of certificate of completion, that if you're looking for somebody to come to work for your firm, and you had two people side by side, somebody from Oregon State University and one from Oklahoma State. That was a slip.
That's
there.
okay.
Oklahoma State University, and they're identical in nature, except for one thing. You notice on the person's resume, they've got these digital badges for communication in the workplace, emotional intelligence, better business presentation, better business writing, so on and so forth. Who are you going to hire? Person with the communication skills, because now they're coming in with a better foundation for it. So that's what gets me going every single day.
Sure.
Is that opportunity. And I still get to interact with the accounting profession, because part of the roles I'm not a tenure track. I don't have a PhD, but I have to maintain my business scale down a bit, because they want me out there, talking about Oklahoma State University and what we're doing.
Well, and if I could summarize that, I mean, your biggest advice, it even goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, was gain the emotional intelligence and you will go very far in the CPA world. Yep. Well, people always ask, are you a tax or an audit CPA? And would you say it's prudent to be deadly in both, or just be more efficient in one and just go all in on that route?
So when you're coming out of college, and I'm getting a lot of these questions right now from students, where should I go? Now, I was a banker, and I felt like I knew the inside of most organizations, or kind of how they ran. So, and my auditing professor at Case Western bored me to death. My tax professor kind of energized me, so I went the tax route. But what I tell these kids right now is you can always go into tax, start off in audit. Understand how the accounting world works inside the organization first and foremost. Then you can say, in the larger firms, it's either this or that. In the smaller firms, you may be audit, but you'll get training on tax, because they also need you during the tax season. I think having a proficient knowledge of both over time goes a long way. But in the early years, and you're coming out of college, my advice is to go into the auditing side of the business. Give it a couple, 2 or 3 years. Plus, you're also working with clients a little bit closer. You're out in the field. You're doing, well, I can't say this anymore because of technology. You're not sitting in the basement of some large organization going through their files. It's all digital and electronic. You're in a conference room. There's no windows, but you're still interacting with folks. And then if you have that want to become in the tax world, then you can ask to be moved into the tax side of the business. And actually, this just came up the other day. I was at a invited dinner, and this question came up, and I had one of the leader of the tax department for ConocoPhillips at my table, and I had mentioned this to this person earlier, and I said, ask her that same question, tax or audit. And I didn't even give her any heads up. She validated exactly what I said. The audit side's where to start. Because it's hard to go from tax to audit. The audit side's where it starts. It gives you a better view of the business world. Not the tax guys are going to go crazy and yell at me because of that. But since I was on the tax side, if I had one regret about being in public accounting, it was I didn't go on the audit side first.
And is it solely because of that? Well, on the tax side, lack of dealing with people more intimately in the business world?
Yeah, I think so. And just understanding the flow of information within an organization at that level.
Okay.
Because you got to learn that flow of the information within the organization, how things flow, but not so much in the tax world.
Sure. Well, in kind of transitioning, as we're wrapping up the show, and we're going to have you back on, because I could talk to you all day about this. So what are you pursuing now that is getting you excited to wake up every day? What are you doing with your time? And also, what products would you say you have purchased and utilized to help with that pursuit?
Good question. Well, what's keeping me busy is this community. What's keeping me busy is being a W-2 employee versus a 1099 for the first time in about 13 years, and having to learn. I'm a Mac guy. I'm having to learn Microsoft, and I've got 10 thumbs on my hand. Seems like every single day trying to transition to that, but actually, at least 10 thumbs. 2 fingers work. I mean, 1 finger on each hand works when I get really frustrated. Sure. Then it turns back to a thumb. Right. So I'm learning all about. Now I have Microsoft Word for Mac, but it's the whole Mac environment, the whole Office environment. I'm learning and relearning Excel and some of the depth of that. So I'm going through this learning curve, as well as working on building this communication department. A communication center. We've had a working group that we were able to establish. We have one major funder for it. We're looking for more funding for the communication center. We're doing surveys. The big launch is going to come next fall 2023. So that keeps me busy. The one product that I don't get paid for this endorsement, but I don't care. I think the one product that every accountant, every business person needs on their computer is Grammarly, period. Or it's an exclamation mark. It could be a comma.
That was good. That was good. Well, that is fantastic. And where can capitalizers that want to become CPAs go and find you?
They can find me at Peter. My email is peter@petermargaritis. That's MARGARITIS.com. And it's pronounced, it should be pronounced like an inflammation, like margaritis. But where's the fun in that? Because that's too close to gingivitis, hepatitis, and
right,
laryngitis.
Of course.
So we just keep it as a cocktail.
Yes.
My website is www.petermargaritis.com. You can starting to find me through Oklahoma State University in the School of Accounting. You can find me on your podcast. I have a podcast called Change Your Mindset, which when we finish, I gotta get you on a time for me to flip the tables and interview you.
Okay, absolutely. Well, Peter, I cannot wait to hop on your show. Thank you for coming on, and thank you all for tuning into another lovely episode of Capitalize Your Finances. If you have any questions about today's episode, you know the drill. You can either shoot me an email, chris@capitalizeyourfinances.com, or you can give me a call at 253-214-3050, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that comes my way. If you have any people in mind that you would like to have on the show to enlighten you on how they've capitalized on their finances, you know the drill. Please hit me up, and I will do my very best to get them on. As always, I'm your host, Christopher Paniotu, the Cap and Capitalize, and until next time, keep capitalizing.
Christopher Paniotu is a registered representative with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Capitalize Your Finances, a separate entity from LPL Financial. Peter Margaritis and any other individual or company mentioned in this podcast are not affiliated with Capitalize Your Finances or LPL Financial.